Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's going on, Fantasy Champs?
What's going on?
Do you ever just wake up in the morning and go, not today?
Yeah.
So like every day?
Sometimes. No, not every day, but sometimes.
Some days I'm like, I get up and I'm hella motivated and I'm like, let's go. Let's crush today. Today I woke up and I was like, nope, not today.
You're like,
Yeah.
Maybe not.
But I'm always here to talk football.
Right.
Because I did spend, while I was supposed to be working, I did spend a majority of the morning staring at my fantasy lineups. So
I haven't even done that yet this week, really.
Was the restaurant
I'm
biz.
about to do that. After this show, that's exactly what I'm going to do, though.
I'll stare at your lineups for an hour. Maybe you'll trade me Kyler Murray.
Probably not.
Whatever. Welcome to Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon with me as always. Today we're going to talk to you about starts and sits. Hopefully you're not having a down day. Hopefully I'm not. It's not a down day. It's just a day where I want to sit on the couch and do nothing.
Yeah.
That's. I don't ever have a down day. I'm usually pretty excited about life.
Right. Of course.
Yeah. Especially when it's football season. So anyway, by the way,
football season, yeah.
I don't want to talk about this every single show, but can we just? I had a revelation today. Like you go, okay, it's week 9. Wow, that's going fast. I just had a revelation today. We're halfway through the season.
Ooh, that's pretty disgusting. Can't lie.
And I'm
that's pretty disgusting.
What am I supposed to do after this is over?
That is a great question. And I don't know the answer to it.
I was getting kind of scared.
Go outside. Done.
I'm psych. I get so mad. I talk about this every single time we talk about how fast the NFL season is. But it's like, you couldn't, like, I know we added a week, but we didn't really add a week. So it's the same 20 weeks that we usually get. And then I got to wait 30 weeks for another football game?
Right.
And we don't count preseason. That's not fair.
Yeah, preseason doesn't count.
Anyway, yeah. So football season's flying by, which I kind of hate. But as long as it's like, once Thanksgiving hits, I always forget. Like, Thanksgiving football happens in my brain. It's like, okay, that's like halfway through the season. That's really not. That's like
right.
That's like crunch time for fantasy postseason like contention. It's like getting into the playoffs right there. That's like week 11, 12.
Yep. Oh, dude,
isn't that crazy?
That's great. That is crazy.
It's usually like right around the trade deadline, for us at least.
Man.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with my life.
It's something else.
But anyway, before we jump into starts and sits for week 9, check out our website, fantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, everywhere. Just go follow us. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcasting platforms, leave a review, share this podcast with your friends, and you'll be entered in to win our everlasting love.
Yeah.
Unless you diss us in the comments, then I'll block you.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I'm not going to block you. Roast us as hardcore as you want. I find it interesting. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, like, and comment down below. If you want to comment some questions about this week, feel free. But what say you, Rick, about starting week 9 now that we rambled on about 4 or 5 minutes about how the NFL season is?
Yeah, we can do that.
Way too short. In just short, what is it? Maybe 7-8 weeks I'll be holding one of these.
Yeah, we'll see about that.
Nah, I probably won't. Every time I talk arrogantly, I lose.
Yeah, that's how it works. You gotta just let it happen, bro.
Yeah, dude. I start looking at emails and text messages when I pick up my phone when you're talking, and it just goes right over my head. Anyway, let's jump in, boss. Let's jump in.
Of course. All right.
So we'll start with the start quarterbacks, sit quarterbacks, and then move from there. I'm not going to try to explain like I did last week because it took me 2.5 days. But we're recording this on Thursday, so I didn't put any Thursday Night Football guys in here, right? Not that there was any guys to talk about. We did that on a Thursday show. Pretty boring Thursday night football game. But if you've already watched it, hopefully you enjoyed every time I say that it's going to be a bad game, the Jets are going to win with Mike White scoring like 4 touchdowns, and it's going to be like a nail biter touchdown at the end in overtime, and like everyone's going to be like, "What a great Thursday night football game!" Well, it didn't look like it on the sheet. So
yeah,
you know what I might do? I might just go in and do a DFS lineup with just all the Jets.
Yeah. You do that. I think I'll pass on that.
I spent $40 last week, and I lost all of it. It's usually when
That's sad. I put $20 in last week and lost all of it because I had half a perfect lineup, but then I also played DeAndre Swift and Kenneth Gainwell. So that was fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I was winning for like 5 seconds. I picked a defense, and usually you get 10 points right away, so I was at the top, $500. It's feeling good, and then 2 quarters in, it was over. But anyway, we'll start with the star quarterback, sit quarterbacks. Try to make this quick today. Get you in and out. Do our best to be concise. Let's start with the start quarterback, which is Joe Burrow. And Rick referenced before the show that we basically put this guy on the list every week.
Pretty much every week, yeah.
Now he hasn't been great. He hasn't been great so far this year, but he's been decent. His problem is the lack of rushing floor. So like if he doesn't score touchdowns or throw for 300 yards, he's kind of screwed. So bear that in mind with this start. But he's playing Cleveland, and Cleveland so far, he's a QB8 by the way on the season, which is pretty good. But he's playing Cleveland, and Cleveland so far this year has been porous against the pass. They've actually been pretty terrible this year, Cleveland Browns.
Yeah.
Sorry, Cleveland fans.
They have been
You're going back
really
to mediocrity. Bad. You got 1 year. But
it's been very, very bad.
Yeah.
Very bad.
And then among other things with the wide receiver position, and Odell Beckham possibly being released soon. That's ridiculous. But either way, yeah, Joe Burrow coming into Cleveland, this game against Cleveland, I believe it's at home in Cincinnati. They have not played yet this year, I don't believe. So, yeah, it's going to be an easier matchup. They give a lot of fantasy points up to the quarterback position the Cleveland Browns do. I'm going to bring that up now. This is not the right numbers. It said weeks 1 through 7, so that's false. But anyway, at the quarterback position so far this year, the Cleveland Browns have given up 21 points per game, which ranks number 5th in the league in points given up to the position. So, this should be a good week for Joe Burrow. I would imagine it would be a good week for Jamar Chase as well.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing with Burrow so far this year is he has been slinging it. Like they're chucking it down the field, so it's good for fantasy. He started off pretty slow, but since week 4, he's been getting 20 points every single week, minimum. 22, 20, 23, 27, 21 against the Jets this past week. And against Cleveland, it's a good matchup. I think they're going to be forced to throw the ball a lot as well in that game. And if he just keeps his turnovers down, or his interceptions at least, he doesn't have any fumbles, but keeps that down a little bit, he's going to be really, really solid for fantasy. It's taking away like 2 points pretty much every single week, 2 to 4 points. So
right.
This week against Cleveland, if he just doesn't throw an interception and plays his game, I think he's good for a 20-point week, at least.
Agreed. Good quarterback. I don't know if he's a waiver wire guy yet or anymore. Is that the proper way of saying it? I think he's owned in over 75% of leagues, so that would be a no. But anyway, I think he's a good option this week. The reason why he keeps falling on this list, though, is I feel like not that he's streamable, but that he's a guy that you can't rely on a week-to-week basis, even though he kind of does produce enough fantasy points to possibly be, edging on a guy who could possibly be a week-to-week start. So, anyway, let's move to the sit of the week at the quarterback position. Rick, tell us about Trevor Lawrence against the Baltimore Bills.
I actually asked you before the show because I have 2 quarterbacks out this week. So I was debating between Trevor Lawrence and Carson Wentz, and you told me Carson Wentz. So I thought about it for a second, and then I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Because Trevor Lawrence is playing against Buffalo this week, and Buffalo has been great defensively this year, especially against quarterbacks. Even though Trevor Lawrence has played pretty well the last few weeks, and he's improved overall since really, like, I would say week 3. Those first 3 weeks were really tough for him.
Yeah.
But since week 3, he has like 3 touchdown passes, 5 total touchdowns, only two interceptions, throwing for almost 300 yards a game, 250 plus a couple times. So he's been playing well, but against Buffalo, it's a big no. That offense still stinks.
Yeah.
There's a small chance he's without James Robinson this week. I think he should be fine, but I think he's probably going to be questionable come game time decision if he's without him. Good luck with Carlos Hyde and Marvin Jones versus Buffalo and that offensive line.
So far this year, too, against easier matchups, Trevor Lawrence has had 25-17, 23-16. Against tougher matchups, he's had 9, 10, and 14. So,
yeah.
I mean, I would say that if you have him on your roster, like if you're in a super flex league and that's what you got, then go for it. But you're in a 1 quarterback league, I would just sit Trevor Lawrence this week. I don't think it's that hard. And I wanted to bring up the points per game given up to the position by the Buffalo Bills, which is 14 points per game at the quarterback position. You look at Trevor Lawrence's averages against tough matchups, and then you look at the averages given up by the Bills. This should be a week where Trevor Lawrence doesn't go off. I would think that's a safe bet. So don't start T-Law against Buffalo.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Let's move to the running back position. We have Boston Scott versus the Los Angeles Chargers. The Los Angeles Chargers rushing game, their defensive run-stopping game has been horrible this year. Very bad. The Pats, for the most part, in the game on Sunday, were running all over the Chargers. In games previously, this team just gets the ball handed off to them every single game. We looked at the Philadelphia Eagles last week and at what they did against who was it? The Detroit Lions rushing defense, and they just blew them up. And so this week, if you're wondering which running back to go with, I would say it's Boston Scott, and I would start him against the Chargers. Boston Scott, he really, I'm not sure why they didn't go with Kenneth Gainwell, considering that Gainwell showed that he was being the second guy. We got that wrong. We told you to start Gainwell. This will probably be exactly when Kenneth Gainwell goes off. But anyway.
Yeah, they go back. This is... Yeah, they just go to the 49ers Kyle Shanahan playbook where they switch running backs every week and don't tell the media. Right. Like they tell the media, big week for Gainwell, and then Scott goes off, and then Scott is expected to be starter, and then Gainwell gets every carry. Yeah, I don't know. It's gross, but yeah, I think Boston Scott, as of right now, with the information that we have, is a good start against the Chargers. If he's going to get majority of the work like he did this past week, then yeah, he's going to be a good start because the Chargers' run defense has been bad, as you said. And Scott looked good. I mean, it was against the Lions, who absolutely blow chunks on defense, especially in the run game. But still, he looked good in a good matchup. I would expect him to do the same against the Chargers. My only concern is, again, they just go to Gainwell and Jordan Howard and say, screw you to everybody else. Yeah. But I think it'll be fine.
Yeah, I agree. It is confusing, but for the most part, I mean, Boston Scott had about 50% of the snaps, and he had the opportunity for 13 touches in the game. So it looked like he was at least splitting to be the number one back on early downs, and he had some success, him and Jordan Howard. So I really don't know. Like, I think the role for Kenneth Gainwell is going to continue being a pass-catching role, which is what he was, working with before. But in this game, I really do feel like, regardless of whether it is Boston Scott or it's Jordan Howard, I feel like it's 100% going to be a game where they're just going to run it with the Los Angeles Chargers defense, because that's what you do against this defense. So, yeah. if they get down early, then this is going to be most likely a tough game for the running backs. So keep that in mind. There is some risk tied to this. Does that like scare you at all, or?
A little bit, it does, but with the injuries and bye weeks at the running back position, I think you have a lot worse options than Boston Scott.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, let's talk about the sit of the week. A guy named Khalil Herbert at Pittsburgh. Herbert, there's a couple of things with Herbert that are kind of concerning to me. He's been really good to the point where some people, not just in the fantasy community, because the fantasy community is psychopath and they want you to trade everyone at every time like it's a fantasy team, which doesn't happen in the NFL. But everyone was to the point with Khalil Herbert where there were some rumors floating around that the Bears might trade David Montgomery at the deadline because this guy has been playing really, really well. And he's earned kind of a role on this team. He's had 7, 18, 15, and 7, or just taking out the games that he hasn't started, he's had 18, 15, and 7 so far this year. So he's had some decent games. He's had some good opportunities. The big problem for him is more particularly that A, they're playing a tough run defense. B, the Bears really don't get themselves into much scoring opportunities in the game, and I think that's kind of what Khalil Herbert needs against a tough run defense to have success, is to somehow punch it in, and I don't think he's going to get too many opportunities to do that in this game, and even if he does, I don't think it'll lead to a touchdown. So that's the second thing. I really don't think there's going to be opportunity for him to score, which would give him a decent fantasy week this week. And, you know, obviously the Pittsburgh Steelers, like I said, one of the toughest run defenses in the NFL. They're giving up 15 fantasy points a game entirely to the running back position. And if they're giving snaps to Damian Williams and Khalil Herbert, among other things, this is going to be like an 8-9 point week for this guy, which, hey, you know, if you're in a 3-flex league and you really are grinding it out and you want that to be the case, and that is the case, but this is a starts and sit show. I wouldn't take the risk on Herbert. I would just sit him. I don't think he's a bona fide, like, running back in the NFL where he, you know, like he's matchup proof at this point. I really don't think that. And so we need to stop looking at Herbert as if he's David Montgomery, as if he's matchup proof, because he really isn't. And I think that, you know, against bad matchups, it's not an unwise thing to do to sit him.
And it's not even saying that he's like, it's nothing against him. It's just, he's not, he didn't come into the league and he's Derrick Henry. Like he's fine for the role he is. I think he's impressed a lot of people. He's impressed me. I think he's looked good. He looks explosive as a player. But yeah, I mean, this week he had 23 carries against San Fran in a tough matchup and had 3.3 yards a carry. Like, I mean, that's going to happen. He did have a very good week against Tampa, though, which is nobody has done, which was impressive. But yeah, I mean, against the Steelers, like this past week, he had 23 carries, 25 touches, and still only he had 25 touches with 7 fantasy points. That's,
yikes.
Yeah, that's kind of gross.
Workload does matter in the NFL, but yeah, that's when you score 7 fantasy points. I don't know.
Again, he was very impressive against the Buccaneers, which is saying a lot because the Buccaneers defense. But against the Steelers, I wouldn't take that risk and start him. David Montgomery also started practicing again this week. I don't know if that means he might have a chance to play. If he plays, then you definitely don't start Herbert. But if he's out, I still wouldn't start him. Obviously, you might not have many options this week because a couple buys, a couple injuries and stuff like that. But yeah, there should definitely be better options available, though.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's move to the wide receiver position, start of the week, which is Chase Claypool. If you drafted Chase, I know there's a team in our home league that, and a league that I'm in, that I have Chase Claypool, Dynasty League, where I just start him every week. But I think there would like, if you had him on any of your teams, would you be starting this guy every single week, or would you hold off on him? Like, would you treat him as like a good matchup play and not play?
Depends how good my team is. I know in the home league I just traded for him, and I plan on him being my flex pretty much every week. But I have the ability to sit him if I want. So,
a lot of people anticipated that with Juju Smith-Schuster not playing, that Chase Claypool was going to take some kind of a larger workload, but he hasn't had that. He's actually had a kind of a disappointing season. He's had a couple of decent games, but without the game against Cincinnati and the game against Denver, he's had 8, 8, 0, 2, and 8. So it hasn't been good for Chase Claypool so far this year. But he has had some good performances against some good matchups. And against Chicago, I think, going back to this game, I think it'll be a decent matchup for Chase Claypool to have some success. I think it's a week where you can get him into your starting lineup pretty safely. I believe the Chicago Bears are giving up to the wide receiver position I want to say 5th most points to the wide receiver position with 28.
Yeah.
So
that's pretty good.
Yeah. So I think there's going to be this will be a good week for Chase Claypool, I think. But give me your thoughts, Rick. What do you think?
This is kind of a gamble in a sense. It is and it isn't, because you obviously made good points about why he should have a good week. But it's also like Claypool seems like one of those players that has bad weeks and then will have really good weeks. I mean, if you look at what he did last year, it was the same thing. He started off the season with 5, then 16, then 2, and then he had that insane 40-point week that was like the breakout game. Then he had 16 again, and then he had 1 the next week. But then he had 10, 11, 19, 13. He had it stretched there, 4 straight very good games where he's a wide receiver 2.
Right.
High-end wide receiver 2, maybe even a low-end wide receiver 1. And then he finished the season with 8, 4, 3, 6, 7, and then 18.
Yakadoo.
Like he was super inconsistent last year. So he's been pretty inconsistent this year. But you know what? He's due for a really good game. Whether it's this week, which I think would make sense against Chicago, or even next week against Detroit. He's due for a big week. His last really good game was in week 5 where he had 21. He had 2 and then 8, but it wasn't like he wasn't involved. He still had 7 and 5 targets. I think he's just an inconsistent player. And I don't know if that's just him or Ben Roethlisberger, which is the more likely reason why he's inconsistent. But against Chicago, it feels like it's a matchup where some people will be sleeping on him, but he ends up having a very good week on Monday Night Football.
Right. Okay. I agree. Is that a Monday Night Football game?
It is, yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Anyway, let's move to the wide receiver sit of the week. As we were discussing before, and we keep going back to the same games. I hate when I do this, but I try not to put the same games and matchups in here, but
then it just happens.
It just happens. So Devonta Smith versus the Los Angeles Chargers is a sit this week. Now, if you have to start him, I guess, but I'm saying he's a sit this week. Only because I do believe that this is going to be a game where the Eagles are at least going to try to ground and pound, as we said earlier. And I think that you look at the inconsistent numbers from Devonta Smith so far this season, and it really shows you that I don't really and I know teams in certain leagues that rely on his production on a week-to-week basis in their flexes. And it's I don't really see how he can be relied upon at this point as a starting wide receiver on your fantasy team. He's had some really good performances, 16, 15, 11. But outside of that, he's played every game this year, and every single one of his games so far this year has been pretty much a bust. So I would say for him, even though he's getting that target share, I would sit him this week against the Chargers. And then, by the way, it is a tougher matchup. Chargers have given up 18 fantasy points a game to the wide receiver position, which is second least in fantasy football.
So they have a horrible rush defense, but a great pass defense.
Yeah, I guess so. Which is kind of not a good thing.
I mean, Devonta Smith has been also not great this season. Not like any one of the Eagles receivers have been good. Rieger has been even worse.
Yeah, right.
But it's hard to start him week to week anyway, and against a matchup like the Chargers, it's almost impossible too. I still think he's kind of like one of those inconsistent rookie receivers, so I still think he's going to have a stretch soon where he's going to put up some good weeks in a row, but I don't think it starts this week against the Chargers, or even maybe the next couple of weeks, because he has a couple of tough matchups coming up.
Agreed. Let's jump to tight end and finish off the show really quickly. I hate the tight end position, so I usually blow through this anyway. But tight end Mike Gesicki versus Houston. Rick, go.
Mike Gesicki's actually been really solid, especially with Tua. Really all season. If you look at since week 3, 13, 14, 6, 15, 18, 8. Very solid. He has a fantastic matchup against the Houston Texans. And I think he's going to continue the hot streak. I believe Will Fuller is out again. Mm-hmm. So it's Waddle, Devontae Parker, and Mike Gesicki. So he's at least involved in the top options. Mm-hmm. I expect a good week and a good matchup.
Houston has been giving up around 11 points to the tight end position. So that kind of lines up really well for Mike Gesicki. I think having 11 points a game would be the average. That would be or 10 and a half to 11 points would be the base average for a tight end in this game against Houston because they're that bad at stopping tight ends, I guess. But I do look at the situation and having Mike Gesicki and the amount of opportunity he does get. I think it will be a plus matchup for him where he can get you a lot of fantasy points. So I would start him this week if you're considering not starting him. I don't know why you wouldn't. I would imagine that there are teams in the league who I don't know how high Mike Gesicki got drafted in drafts. I can't remember. But I would imagine that there are some teams that drafted 2 tight ends and they're deciding between Gesicki and some other clown right now. So I would start Gesicki this week. And then the sit of the week is Dalton Schultz. And I'll just quickly say Denver is a tough team against tight ends. They've given up 4 points per game to the tight end position. And Dalton Schultz last week I think he tied for 4th on the Dallas Cowboys for targets with Ezekiel Elliott. I think he had 6. So
Schultz had 7. I don't know how many
6 or 7. But either way, so he was like, I think he was 4th in targets on the Dallas Cowboys, which shows you something. He got 7 targets, but
he was 3rd.
3rd in targets.
So screw you.
Say it again. So screw you.
I said he was 3rd. So screw you.
But anyway, yeah. So I look at this right now, and I don't necessarily think like Dalton Schultz. And I explained this last week, and me and Rick have talked about it off the show about Dalton Schultz and the expectations for him going forward in the second half of the season and stuff like that. And I really don't think that there's going to be much there for him. Like he's going to get some target share. Obviously, Dallas throws the football a lot, but I don't know if it's going to lead to the same production he had previously in the season. But either way, it doesn't really matter. When you're playing Denver, it's a tougher matchup. So I just don't think Dalton Schultz is going to have a great week this week.
Yeah, no, it is a tough matchup against Denver. Mm-hmm. They have been very good against defenses. It does say in his thing from Roto Baller, mm-hmm. Roto World, they said they just lost Von Miller, obviously, who got traded to the Rams. Mm-hmm. So they think Schultz shouldn't have a hard time getting open. I don't know if did Von Miller cover tight ends.
No, that's
I don't know why that makes any sense.
Von Miller.
Either way, it's a tough matchup. I will say if he keeps getting like 7 targets a week, though, I still feel fine about him. But yeah, this week is going to be hard. I think Dak coming back though should help, but we'll see.
Oh yeah, because they didn't have what's his name.
They had a who was the starter? Cooper Rush.
Cooper
is that
Rush.
his name? Yeah.
I was waiting for a stupid Amari Cooper joke when he scored a touchdown in that game, and a bunch of them came in, and I'm like, stop, please. Stop with this complete
Cooper.
Anyway, so there you have it. There are your week 9. The last show, I hit that button and it just wrecked both of our ears. It didn't come out on the final edit because I edited it out, but it was pretty horrible.
It's tough.
Hit the wrong button. But anyway, there are your starts and sits for week 9. We coming with you trade targets tomorrow? We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Yes, sir. Later.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.